All right, what up, guys? Welcome. We have a really cool guest today, and I want to spend some time going through what it's like to be able to build a team under you, right? Because it's always like when we start a business, it's just us, and we got to find the right teammates, and sometimes we make the wrong mistakes. So today, I figured there was no better way to be able to go through building a high performing team other than bringing in a territory titan in the DFW area. Steve, welcome.
Territory tight. I am great, Chad. How are you this morning?
I'm doing good. Yeah, territory tight. You walk into Dallas and there's nobody that doesn't know you, whether it's the stadiums that are out there, the massive projects that are happening. Capo's name is behind almost all of it. And I would love to be able to unpack how you built a team that's able to accomplish something in such a fast growing, massive metro.
Yeah, you're very kind. Thank you for saying that. There's a lot of great contractors in this marketplace. Keith Post, Jane Williams, and myself started the company back in 2003, and we have been so blessed to have the success we've had. There's over 445 employees in the commercial division right now. And we just, knock on wood, we've just been so fortunate along the way. And it is team. You hit the nail on the head. It's always about team.
So I love that. So today isn't about the tactics or the war stories. I want it to be more about how to build teams where the owner isn't having to press every button or the owner isn't the bottleneck. Because so many times when I'm talking to contractors, they're trying to figure out how do I empower my employees to be able to make decisions. And inside my head, as I unpack this, the right decisions. And sometimes that's so hard because it's like what I think is right could be different than what you think is right. So, okay, which button do we push? So we unpack this. You've built multiple ventures across the DFW and I'll say the US. When you talk about National Women in Roofing, you talk about NRP, just like the initiatives that you've been a part of. How is it that you built K-Post? What is the structure? What is the, I don't want to say secret sauce, right? But like, how did you even start to build $100 million company?
And thanks for that. Let's make sure that we give Heidi Ellsworth and her team the real credit. Trent Cotney and I were the two lonely males who were involved in National Wind Roofing to get started. And we were there about 4 months and said, ladies, you have it. Let us know what's going on. But big supporters. I think you've got to start in the very beginning. I read a book when I was a kid growing up, and it was from Stephen Covey, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And I think that it always resonates with me that no matter what you're doing, if you're starting a company or a project or you're involved in the associations or even in life, where do you want to end up? And so you have to begin with the end in mind. And that's one of the 7 habits. The second habit that I follow is seek to understand and then be understood. So if you begin with the end in mind and then you seek to understand along the journey, it could come across really well. And I think the third thing is decide what kind of business you want to have. Do you want to be a dictator type management that you want to push everything down? Do you want to be a small company, a medium sized company, a large company? Each one of those areas have to be defined in the very beginning. And then culture. You've got to decide what kind of culture that you're going to have. Let me break them down from the very beginning. We decided in Dallas that our why is to be the most trusted contractor in the North Texas marketplace. That was our why. Everything that we did around that was what's your why? Our why is to be the most trusted contractor. The second thing we wanted to do is that we wanted to build capacity. We were noticing at the time, this was 23 years ago, it was before the movement to sub crews and the immigration issues and all of that stuff that was out there. But we wanted to build capacity. We were fortunate enough to have people like Keith Post leading our company with the reputation he had for integrity. No matter if we got the job or not, the architect or the developer or even the GC or a building owner, asset managers would call him back when they were working with another contractor and said, hey, this is really going well, but this isn't going so well. Can you give me some insight on it? So we knew that if we would build capacity, that would separate us from the rest of the groups. So that was really the first two things that we decided we wanted to do. We wanted to be the most trusted and we wanted to build capacity. If you're going to build capacity, there's no way that Keith Jane or myself could run capacity. You'd have to have a team. And so we decided, my background is in sports. My background is sports licensed products. So for 25 years before I was in the building envelope business, I was in the sports business, Super Bowls, World Series, that kind of stuff. My management style has always been coaching, not dictating, not pushing things down, but pulling things up. Practice, repetition, really developing plays, workflows. That's really my background. And so that's what we did. We took on a sports theme. We had a purpose. What is our why? We decided our culture was going to be fun and we wanted to build capacity. So I think that's the start of figure out what you want to begin with, and then you can decide how to build your team from there.
So there's so much that I want to unpack with this. So I have questions. Is that okay?
Oh, absolutely.
All right. So start with why. Is that a Simon Sinek
It is.
guide, or was that like a purpose? Why do we exist?
It was pre-Simon Sinek, but I use it now very much. We have K-Post University, and there's a couple classes that I teach, and one of them is the why. What is your personal why, and what is our company why, and how can we marry them together? But that you've got to have a process and a system going before you can get there.
Okay. So I love that. A couple different things. I didn't start, I'll be the first one to say non-diagnosed ADHD. I can't read and comprehend nearly as well as other people that I've been with. And what I've learned throughout it is that people learn all kinds of different ways, right? They have to do it, they see it, they hear it. There's all kinds of different things. And one thing that I took in inside my, I was probably early 30s was Audible. And it changed my life. That all of these different everybody would recommend, right? It's like, I just can't read it and comprehend it, and I'm being humble and open here. So it's like, our first thing I did is, 1, I don't have time. Biggest lie I ever told myself.
All of us tell ourselves, you make time for what your priority is.
Yes, yes. I at that point, I had a life coach with me. I've always been like, "Help me understand what I don't know." One of the first things that we figured out was I drove 20 minutes to work, like 23 minutes to work. Times that by 2, that's 46 minutes every single day I spent in the car listening to the radio. Can I use that time better? As we talk about some of the books and stuff like that, times that by 5 days, right? I'm finishing a book, every week and a half. I went from, like, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Getting Things Done, Radical Candor, right? All of these different books that had such an effect on me. That's the first thing that I think I learned. So if you're like, "Man, I don't have time," whatever it is, do the work. Figure out how you learn. The second thing that I've learned is I had the opportunity to be able to work with bigger and bigger companies. And I don't know why this is, but the bigger the company, it seems the more humble and open the owner is. I've said this before, like going into expos, like maybe we got a booth or I'm talking to someone. It's like, I'll get the contractor that's always, no, nope, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm good. I don't need anything. I'm just here to look. But then what I found is that the person who will talk to you is the $100 million owner who's just, "Hey, what do you got? Talk to me." And they're just searching for additional things to be able to level up, where some of those small to mid-sized contractors are so protected. It's just crazy to me. And as you were talking through all of the stuff, that's what was going through my head, is that start with the why, the K-Post University. It's all of this. We're going to share this knowledge and this wealth, which sometimes is different than what I see from small and medium contractors.
We have a team now. So by having this team that you were talking about earlier, it frees Keith and I up and Jane up to be able to be more open and bring people in. But I think it's always been our culture to share. The contracting world is made up of typically a pissed off estimator and a pissed off superintendent that left someplace painting, landscaping, plumbing, roofing, much like what happened with Keith and his original partner in his original business. And they were pissed off at where they were at because the owner wouldn't do stuff. They went across the street, they put their shingle up, no pun intended, and boom, they were in business. And they themselves became one of the biggest contractors in the DFW marketplace. Not as organized, not as marketing, not as set up with processes and systems, but they just did it right. If Keith went out and sold it and said, this is how we're going to do it, operations executed it. And between the two of them, they figured out exactly how to take care of the client. Because if we always forget as a company, no matter what size you are, our bosses are not the owners. Our bosses are the clients each and every time. Our bosses, it depends on how that owner feels, excuse me, that owner that you're selling to, that customer, that client, how they feel about you will gauge the growth of your business. We've been very fortunate that when we set K Post up and we had an offense and a defense and a special teams and we had this sports analogy, and then we were fortunate enough to get the old Cowboy Stadium that had the hole in it so God could watch his football team. And we coded that job that put us on the map and tied to our sports. And then all the way through, as you recognized earlier, we've targeted that. We wanted to be a sports driven type company. And you've got to decide that as a company as in the very beginning as you start. And then as we were having some successes, we did something that we saw in other industries that were not happening in our industry, and that we got involved in creating peer groups. And then people like yourself and others now have taken on to the marketplace and said, if we can pull these peer groups together, people from different parts of the country, and share best business practices, we can elevate the industry. And if we elevate the industry, then our industry becomes a destination for people to want to work at. And if we do that, then we can fix the workforce development problems that we have in any of our construction businesses. Sorry to get a long tooth there in that, but it really is a process.
I didn't know that you were in sports prior to this. If anybody who's followed me on social media or anything else like that, I'm really big into soccer. My kids play all that kind of different stuff. And one of the things that you're going through is ultimately what's the session objective is what's going through my head, right? Because that's what's happening inside my sess now. And trust is what I pulled from you, right? We want to be trusted. And as you build core values and purpose and why and all of that stuff, it doesn't have to be exact because trust is enough to be able to say, we want to be the most trusted contractor in DFW. Okay, so now we can go into what does trust look like? And sometimes, even more importantly, what does trust not look like? Because if we build these teams have to have the same mission, purpose, and why behind us, right? So, what are the standards that are non-negotiable? And I know this is a little bit biased into you, but as you start building your team, are there any standards that are non-negotiable or something that regardless if it costs us money or whatever it might be, like this is the line?
I think it comes back to something that Keith told me when we were first starting business together way back 28 years ago. And I was being interviewed. And he said, I run my business like I was raised: no lying, no stealing, no cheating, and no disrespect. But if you work in my company, those are the four things that will get you terminated, period. In the conversation. You disrespect an employee, a vendor, a client, an owner, you cheat, you steal, you lie, and you're gone. And there's just no, it is like fall protection. You don't get a second chance. You have a fall protection problem in our company. If you are not following our deals, you get 3 days off, and you don't send home to mom or dad or your husband or your wife. And they want to know how come you were sent home with 3 days without pay? Because you put yourself in danger of not getting home at night. And that's a Jane Williams safety scenario. We're going to get everybody home at night. So I think those four things that I mentioned to you are really the basis of integrity. And if you're a golfer, it's doing the right thing when nobody's looking. Okay, so when your ball has a terrible lie out in the middle of the rough and you want to move it to get a better shot, then you have to call the penalty on yourself. And that means installing the roof correctly, managing the crews correctly. Don't take shortcuts. Have open dialogue when something's going wrong. Call your teammate out. I can remember for years when I was walking on the roofs, and I don't know if they just happened because I was there or it didn't always happen that way, because sometimes I would show up and they didn't know I was there and I was watching. And you can see our foreman and our lead man calling the teams out that they didn't install something correctly or they needed to roll out modified and let it breathe first instead of just putting it down. And that took an extra step and it took more time, but the reality was it needed to be done. So those four things translate into really doing the right thing when nobody's looking, always.
How do you get the team to, but I don't know if buy-in's the right word to it, right? But like when I think of high performing teams, I think of teams that hold each other accountable, right? Not because they're the boss or they're over or whatever the hierarchy is, but it's, hey, that's not acceptable, right? Or something along that side. How do you get that behavior to be all the way from, let's just say you at a leader side or a coach side, all the way down to our helpers?
I'm going to reflect something that Nick Saban has done. I think that everybody knows Nick Saban now. He's now on television, but when he was going through his coaching career, and no matter where he went, he always built great assistant coaches. He always brought in people and then he taught them the way that it needed to be done. And that's what Keith and Jane and I did in the very beginning. We set the standard of what we want, how we wanted our people to be treated, how we wanted the client to be treated, and the brand that we wanted to put out in the marketplace. Always following our why. We wanted to be the most trusted. That trusted is not just externally, it's internally. So if you tell somebody you're going to pay them, you pay them. If you tell somebody that you're going to offer a process, a bonus program or a benefit program, you execute it no matter if you had a good year or you had a bad year. Subjective bonuses, of course, they're subjective. If you have a good year, you pay more. If you have a bad year, you don't pay as much, but you still pay something that they understand that it just wasn't as good as the year before type situation. But you have great assistant coaches. And that's what we've been able to do. We were able to 10 years ago, to begin with the end in mind, we hired Beacon Exit Strategies with Kevin Kennedy and Joe Bazzano. And they came in and they helped us prepare for the end. They helped us set up a structure. And then one of those structures was EOS. So we hired an EOS facilitator. And that person understood right up front, we're looking for a 10-year exit. So we want to make sure that we build the team that has an ownership mindset that prepares us for a 10-year exit. That exit got disrupted with a little thing called a world pandemic, a little world supply chain situation. But as we get older now, I'm 69, I'll be 70 this year. Keith is 71. And Jane is still kicking and screaming because we're taking her with us when we retired. But the reality is we've been blessed to be able to set up some really good assistant coaches, and then they've been elevated accordingly.
So I think that's a really good question to ask yourself. Who is your assistant coach? If we were to come into a business, and especially some of the smaller businesses that are growing, right? They're still very much owner occupied. Owner occupied is probably not the right word, right? Owner led
Yeah,
driven.
owner led. Yeah.
Yeah. So who's your assistant coach? Or who are you training to be your assistant coach? Because I'm just thinking through my head, like who I would say, but I probably didn't do a good enough job with them truly being my assistant coach. Right. And as we're going into, again, I'm going to go back to my soccer analogy, right? Like I might be there watching the game, but the assistant coach is seeing how many times was the ball transitioned from attacking to defending, right? How many times do we break the line?
Right.
They're keeping all of those metrics because I might know the score of the game, but that's not what we're tracking. Right. So taking it back into the roofing world, right? The owner might know what we invoice, but at the end of the day, do you know work in progress? Do you know backlog, right? Do you know if you have enough trucks to be able to even hit the goal that you have coming up in April? So on and so on, which is all the metrics behind it that truly lead into the team that produces the end result. Does that make sense?
It makes a total sense. And let me ask you, using the soccer analogy, do you have time, energy, or is it your goal to go and touch every one of those players that are on the team and teach each one of them every one of the skills you want them to have? The answer has to be no, because you're only one human being and you only have the attention of those folks for a certain amount of time because they have a job to do, right? They have a life to live in that scenario. We have the same thing in a company. There's no way that I can get through the entire company and be able to touch everybody and want them to understand what we're doing. But if we can build a team of leaders, people that want to do their portion of it, they don't have any interest in running the whole company. And by the way, it's not their skill set, their personality test, the investment that you make in them is not what they want. And it can be convoluted with today's society. There's multiple things that happen within the society that change our baby boomer mindset of how to look at stuff. We made all our reputations in life based on our business as baby boomers. There is so much study that's done on this that we've created our life. It's caused divorces. It's caused people to go crazy. It's caused people to retire and be lonely and not know what to do because they didn't have anything else. And thank God that the Gen X and the Gen Y came behind it. And then the connectors and Gen Z and people like that. And they've all taken a piece of that and made it their own. But when you have all those people in your company, you're a baby boomer, you've got to figure out how to navigate this. So it comes back to that very beginning. What do you want to do as a company? Begin with the end in mind. If you want to have a 10-person internal staff and a 30% external staff, and you want to stay under a certain dollar amount and you want to lead from the top down, then that's what you're going to do. But that's not the question you asked me. You asked me, how can you build a $100 million company? Because our goal was to build capacity, right? So you have to trust and let go. You have to build a team, work with the people individually, and trust and let go. And candidly, I don't mean this to be a plug for you, but it's a plug for you. You have to hire subject matter experts that know their area of the business that you don't, and allow them to work with your team that you're not involved in that portion of. You don't see me or Keith or Jane involved in your working with our teams. We'll come in every now and then for something and catch up on things, but you work directly with our leadership, with our vice presidents, with our directors, with our managers. You even work with the salespeople and the estimators. Okay. But you have to be willing to make that investment in your people. And that's such a hard thing to do when you're a smaller company and where are you on your payroll? Where are you on your AR? Where's that whole thing working? Are you willing to take 10% less this year and hire somebody like a Chad and a David and have them work with your team so you can elevate it to the next level? So once we decided that we wanted capacity, that went along with our trust, we hired a subject matter expert with Kevin and Joe at Beacon Exit Strategy, and they set the course for us to use a management process to take you to the next level. There are dozens of them out there. We chose EOS. And the EOS platform through Traction helped us with hiring a facilitator. And then as we moved along, our managers went from managers to officers. Once we went over the $50 million mark, we realized running a $50 million company is a hell of a lot different than running a 40 or 30 or $20 million company. And there's different steps along the way that I'm sure that you talk to your clients about. But once they became officers of the company, they were actually vice presidents of the company, we brought in another subject matter expert in Chris Flickinger. And Chris Flickinger's group was a mind performance coach. We're not exiting our company and we hired an exit coach. We went to an EOS platform and we brought in an EOS facilitator. I'm a coach, but I'm not trained as a coach. I have 50 years of business experience and I have a football sports analogy, but I'm not trained that way. So these guys were psychologists and they were counselors and they took them through different personality and psychological things to build them to start thinking like owners. And this is a small group of 7 people in the company, but they are the 7 people that are leaders.
Question. One's a statement as we unpack this. So at no point am I safe to say this was ever supposed to be a 50, a 75, $100 million business. The first thing is
The dollar amount, Chad, was 6 million the first year, 8 million the second year, 10 million the third year, and no more than 100 employees. That was our initial goal as a company. As we sat down and we laid out the blueprint and we put our business plan together, that's what we were going to be. And we did 8, 14, and 16 because of the people we hired, and we empowered them, we paid them, we gave them support, and we got the hell out of their way, which is a lot different than a lot of small companies start. The owner feels like they always have to have their DNA and everything. But we were fortunate enough to hire really good people, and probably people that were much higher in tenure and industry education and experience. So we invested big time in the company. We chose not to take money out of the company for the first 18 months. We chose to make that investment in the people. And I think that's a common theme that you're hearing me say about how do you grow a company is you have to invest in people and you have to trust people.
and those people are going to build the systems. We're going to hire someone who is an absolute expert in estimating. I'm just using an example, right? They're going to build this estimating system that's going to allow us to be able to have one trust inside the estimates that we're putting together and then capacity. We got to know, we got to be able to scale it. Is that safe to say? I'm going
Very safe.
like where you started. What I keep hearing inside here is that we want to be the most trusted roofer in the Metroplex. And we need
Contractor.
Contractor, yes.
We didn't care if it was electrical, plumbing, whatever. We wanted to set a standard.
Which also makes so much sense because when you think about it, you talk about the waterproofing side, and then you go into, you got the roofing, the waterproofing, lightweight insulating concrete.
Lightweight decks, service, sheet metal.
All of that was driven from being the most trusted contractor that has capacity. It's cool because when I first meet with contractors and like in one of our kickoff sessions, the first question I ask is, what type of business are we building? And a lot of times it's always what do you mean? It's we have revenue, we have gross margin, and we have net profit. Revenue is a sales game. Let's just go sell as much as we can. We'll produce whatever we can. We'll find someone to do it. Your gross margin is about efficiency because $100 million company can still lose money. When you start looking at gross
Yes, it can.
anybody can sell sales reps, right? Anybody can sell $1 million and lose money.
Right.
So how do we put that together, right? Because revenue is we're going to go sell 100 million. Great. Gross margin, that's operational efficiency. And then net profit
Safety.
Yep, 100%. And then net profit has always been like lean and mean. How much can we do with as little as possible? Uh,
Mhm.
and I'm not saying any of them are right or wrong, but it's like that's the first thing we got to figure out. But what I'm learning here is that's not the first thing to figure out. The first thing is, okay, why are we doing this?
And then use that filter when you build your core values of giving back and integrity and team before self and detail oriented. Do that in all your hiring and termination process. That is your filter. And if anything gets out of whack through that process, you've got to filter through it. And of course, you make exceptions for different situations, but not because of people. You base it based on the situations. If you have a bad apple and you keep supporting the bad apple, it's going to ruin the whole bunch.
I'm going through like my memory index. And before David and I were on this mission, right? And this purpose to be able to do this, David was a fractional leader for a company that I was a part of. And when he listens to this, he's probably going to smile because I hate it. Every time we had to fire somebody, he'd always be like, nope, let's get together. What happened? What did we do wrong in the hiring process? What did we do wrong in the onboarding process? What did we do wrong during his or her time here to not give them what
Mhm.
they need that resulted inside them being fired? And I honestly, while it was happening, I was like, dude, I don't have time for this. We got to go. But
He's right.
I know he is, right? I'm not.
Hiring and firing, the two toughest things we do as owners, we do as leaders, because hiring is exciting. You get excited about the person and the possibilities. And then somewhere down the line, when there's a hiccup and it's not working, you made a mistake. You didn't onboard correctly. You read the situation wrong in the beginning. You didn't get enough background on the person. You didn't ask, you got so infatuated with the new employee smell that you forgot what you were trying to figure out. We probably have the longest hiring process in the world, and probably equally as in the termination process, because we're very sensitive about, is this personality going to work out in our company? Because a bad apple can really destroy your company. And it's been a fabulous journey, Chad. It's just been a really fabulous journey to see. We have field employees that have been with us 20 years. Over 50% of our field has been with our company. I think it's over 10 years. We have very little turnover, knock on wood again, in our salary employed position. People still want to be part of our journey. They still want to be part of our mission. And I think that's hard for, since May of 23, have turned over the day-to-day operation to three leaders. Two of them were picked by leadership itself, and one was inserted by Keith and I so that we could have a triangle type management. I believe in triangle managements. Other people don't, but I do. And
What does that mean?
that means that all three have to agree. Two of the three have to agree that this is what we're going to do going forward. And I can tell you there were many times that Keith and I and Jane behind closed doors would disagree about something, but then the two of us would agree. Jane and Keith would agree on it, and I would step out of that room, even though I may have disagreed with it. And I promoted that and I campaigned that, and that's what we did. And if it was good or bad, no matter what, that's just what we believed in. The three of us believed in each other, and we believed when we made a decision, we would go forward. So triangle management is that two have to convince three that it's the right thing to do.
Because if you have two, it's
Now,
yes, no, someone wins, someone loses. When you have three, now we actually got, I don't want to say a cohort, right? But we got a group where we're actually going to be having different conversations. Everyone sees the world in their own way, right? Sees the situation, sees the opportunity.
so it's just, and especially when they don't own the business. So at this stage, they don't own the business. And as we look in the future and see what that's going to look like, whether it's an employee ownership program or a third party person comes in or something like that, as we look at that, you also have to keep that in mind that they may not like a three-way management style, but for us, it works good. And it's allowed us to be able to build the team. That was the initial question that we started the broadcast is, how do you build a team to run a $100 million company? And how do you keep them?
Yeah, that's the real question, right? Because now you're building these superstars. How do you make it sticky enough for them to be able to continue to be able to want to build their career with you and not jump
It's
to the
hard.
shiny thing?
First of all, you've got a lot of private equity money out in the marketplace. They're throwing a lot of dollars at people. But there's very few of these companies that are out there that have built a structure, an internal structure with history that shows that if you go to work for them, that you're going to be able to continue your career and because you began with the end in mind. So I've had a number of them come up to me and said, hey, we were going to buy a car the other day. And instead of buying a new car, We bought a used car because our end in mind was to buy a different house. So we chose not to buy the new car, but to buy that. Thanks for teaching me that. I had another person tell me the other day, this person has been with our company 15 years and he's gone from being a waterproofing laborer. His dad worked for our company for a number of years until he retired, to now he's a senior estimator, one of our best estimators that he had. He was in our future leaders group, which is like the FEI program that NRCA has. We had Tom Shanahan come in from NRCA when he retired and put together a program for us internally. Anyway, the point being is he said, you taught me to think about what is my why. And I'm now talking to my kids about what their why is and how their why fits into our family and what our family why is. I was blown away, Chad. That's something that happened at work. Usually the work conversation, I remember when my parents were growing up, they were bitching and moaning about work that day or their workload, their stress, whatever. He went home to talk to his family about this, and now they're building their culture and their family based on what their family why is.
With all of this stuff we're building, there's so much to unpack. And I'm going to make the assumption anyone listening is probably going to have to listen to it 2 or 3 times as we talk about the why, the purpose, triangle management. There's so much stuff inside here. What do you feel is next to be fixed in the industry? Because there's so much stuff that's going on and you've been involved in so much already. What's next?
We have a workforce development problem. Everybody has a workforce development problem. It's tied to immigration. It's tied to the trades no longer being taught in our schools. There's so many reasons that we've gotten to the position that we're at today. Add technology, add working in an Amazon for 35 hours a week and getting air conditioning, health insurance and benefit programs and things like that.
$4 an
Who,
hour.
who wants to work in construction out in the elements, no matter if you're in landscaping or plumbing or painting or roofing or whatever it might be? Unfortunately, for the roofing trade, there's not a apprenticeship program unless you're involved in the unions. And the unions are great in certain cities. In Texas, we don't have unions except in the automotive side of our industry. To my knowledge, there's no apprenticeship program for building envelope. Behind the scenes, the NRCA has worked with NCCER, which is a governing body, apprenticeship programs like HVAC, mechanical, plumbing, et cetera. They've got 43 trades that they work with. They have developed a program for apprenticeship. It's a merit shop apprenticeship program, which is just a non-union setup. And it's currently working with ABC, the Associated Building Contractor Group, that has 67 training locations around the country. And so myself and Tammy Hall and Tony Rader have started an initiative. We created a nonprofit, and we have folks from the ABC, the NCCER, CTE, Skills USA, Alliance, Roofing Alliance, and NRCA that we're working with to promote this over the next 3 years around the country. If we can figure out a way to offer kids coming out of school or even your own employees to get a certification and apprenticeship that is Department of Labor supported, and there are grants, all sorts of things for it. So the financial part of it is not the burden to do it. And they walk out with a certification that says, I am an official apprenticeship that they can take and go from company to company, or they can do it, stay within their own company, like a K Post, that will help elevate them in their career. The beta test was here in Dallas. We did it over a 2-year period of time. We had companies like Chamberlain and Castro and K Post that were involved in sending different employees. I think there were 2 other companies that had employees in it as well. Of the 8 people that we put through the program, all 8 are still with us. 4 of them have been promoted. The other 4 are doing better work and have gotten raises, and we're a better company for it. So the return on investment's been great.
I love this. So how you're talking about coming out of school? Are we talking like high school? Are we talking college? Are we talking either?
It's either, depending on which way you want to go. The NRCA and Roofing Alliance have done a great job of creating programs that get you in our industry, whether it be track, it be a Roofing 101, or even there's a Clemson University program that allows you to get a minor in roofing. And that all works really well. Yeah, it all works really well for the white collar side of our business, but there's that gap that's missing for the blue collar side of our business. And I don't care how well any of us sell. It's the defense that wins Super Bowls. It's that field that makes stuff happen. It's the field that brings in that food, water, and shelter. Those are the folks that provide the shelter in our industry, in our communities. And so we really haven't done anything for them to get them in our industry. We have pro certification from the NRCA that once you're in the industry and you've been in it for a couple of years, that you can advance your skills and get credibility, get certification, and that's for you specifically, just like this apprenticeship program would be. But to get them into the industry, we don't have anything. So your question was, what's next? Hopefully that as I retire from the day-to-day operation, that we can give back to the industry, and along with Tammy Hall and Tony Rader and myself and the folks that are on the committee that I mentioned before, that we can make a difference.
How can contractors be involved, support this? What can the industry do to be able to get behind this? I think we're all on the same page, right? Labor and good
Yeah,
labor. How does the industry support you in this initiative?
it's a little premature. We're just going through the funding side from the different folks to be able to get the basis for it. The curriculum's already done. It's bilingual and in English. So I would be on the lookout for it from your regional or local roofing association, maybe in fourth quarter, possibly first quarter. For sure at IRE next year, it'll be out there. And then folks like yourself and Heidi Ellsworth with Roofers Coffee Shop and the different industry associations are putting out huge stories on it. We've done a couple of interviews for it right now for it to break probably the beginning of fourth quarter.
I love that. Keep me up to date with it because, like you said, as we continue to be able to build this, and I think even going back to, like you said, trust and capacity, right? This is about capacity. How do we get good people that stay with the company, that can grow careers with us, that's ultimately going to feed our families and everything else that come into it? So I love that.
It's also about investing in your employees. But there are companies that want to have a base of employees, like their traditional subcontractor. This is a great program for them. If companies are out there, and we've seen a lot of it in the last couple of years, they want to be more like brokers. They have an estimator, they have an ops person in themselves. They may even sub the estimating out to somebody else. They may sub the billing out to somebody else, and they just really have a sales machine that does it. The apprenticeship program is not for them. But fortunately, there's over 65,000 roofing companies in this marketplace doing over $60 billion in business. And many of them, the majority of them, want to have their own crews doing their own work to build their businesses.
I love it. All right. So start with why. First question that we got to be able to answer. Why are we doing this? Right. Go back to Simon Sinek. If you haven't watched that TED talk or anything else that's connected to it, go do it. I talked a little bit about learning, how people learn. Everybody learns differently. They see it, they hear it, read it, right? See it, hear it, feel it, do it, all that kind of different stuff. If you guys don't know what your best learning path is, explore all of them. Figure out what it is. It was world changing to my side.
The audio series is great. Maybe you could put a link on your podcast here where they could go to that to pick that up.
100%. We'll throw that in. There's tons of different things. Audible's the big one, right? But there's a lot of different ways. Speechify I found, which is great as well. So Speechify will actually take documents and read them to you. So if you have like big documents, different things like that, I've done all kinds of different things to be able to improve my ability to learn faster and easier. We talked a little bit about being open. That's the part I love about whenever I work with you or get the opportunity to do stuff like this. You're open. We're always learning. We're always looking for something better. And that's a huge part of being a great leader. I love the triangle management side. I said there's so much to unpack. What are some of the big key takeaways that you think either go back and listen to or like we went through today? Anything on your side?
I just say really decide what you want to be as a company and then build everything back from that. It has really helped us understanding that we wanted to be capacity. Look, DFW Marketplace blessed us with so much great opportunity that's in this market. And as opportunity became available and our defense did a great job of building the roofs, our offense did a good job of taking care of the company, and our special teams did that job of dotting the I's and crossing the T's and made sure we had everything we needed to be able to do our jobs. We grew, and that's because we wanted to. We began with the end in mind. Know your lane. Okay, don't go chase it if it's not your lane. If it's not the absolute thing that you do the best in, know your lane because you decided in the beginning what your why was and what you wanted to be and what kind of culture you wanted to have and invest in your people. I think that's what I would take away from this podcast.
I love it. And the one piece that I'm going to add, who's your assistant coach?
Yeah,
Who's your
exactly.
assistant coach? And it's just what it is, because so many people are trying to do this alone, right? They think, I got to figure this out. I got to do this. But that just made so much sense to me. Who's the assistant coach that's helping you track the metrics that are truly going to move the business to wherever you want it to go, right? And build the business that you love. All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And anytime you want to come back, you want to jam on anything, I can tell you for me, and I promise you, everyone that's listening, you're always welcome, sir. Truly appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thanks for
Bye,
having me.
guys.